Well, hello there and welcome back to my channel. This is Carol King, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about cleaning brushes. There's a lot of really old videos out there, and I just thought I'd give you something updated. So these are several brushes. Some of them are synthetic nylon, and some of them are real hair brushes. I really love my squirrel hair brush, which I just cleaned and restored a nice point to. So whether you like natural brushes or synthetic nylon, that's fine. That's up to you. Each painter will buy a lot of brushes and determine. I probably have 100 brushes. And to be honest, I normally don't spend a huge amount of money on them, like I find them on sale or. But when I do spend a lot of money on brushes, which can be $40 or $50 now and more for a decent, watercolor brush, I kind of want to make it last. So if we want to do that, we have to clean them in certain ways. Ivory soap is very gentle for real hair brushes like sable. This is a sable brush. Haven't cleaned it in a while. Don't know if it's got a lot of paint left in it, but we're going to clean it up. Looks like a little color coming out of there. Some greens and some blues and grays. You can see that when I wipe it over on the other side. You can see the color a little better coming out of the brush. And this, obviously, I cleaned it when I got done using it. But it just still has a lot of dirt left in it. By the way, when you clean a brush, don't ever shove down at the bottom like that. With any kind of brush, you shouldn't do that. But particularly with sable or real hair brushes. Like squirrel brushes or anything like that. When you're shoving it down like that, you're basically ruining the shape of the end of that brush. So it's really not going to do you a whole lot of good if you need to do detail. This thing was quite dirty, even though it looked clean when I picked it up. And certainly the last time I used it, I didn't notice any color deviations from what I was using, but deep down in there, it's got a lot of dirt, which is why it had lost its tip. It didn't have a nice sharp tip like it should have. This one is a fairly decent quality brush, and it had lost its tip. Now when I clean, instead of going down like that on the bottom, I come on the side. Even when I'm painting. When I'm painting and I'm removing color, I never go down to the bottom with a real sable brush. I come to the side and I'm gently rubbing back and forth against the side like that. That removes the color from it. I'll go from my dirty water over to my clean water and do the same thing. I'm not pushing hard on the side. I'm just applying very gentle pressure. I'm starting to get the tip back on that. I'll scrub a little bit more. I'm not pressing straight down, as you can see, like that. I've got my brush mostly sideways, so the pressure I'm applying is just at a slight, what is it, maybe a 30-degree angle, so that we're putting a little bit of pressure down here where the paint tends to stick, but not a lot of pressure, and certainly not in a straight down degree or way. Still getting some dirt out of that. And I can finish this later, but I just wanted to show you even a brush that looks like it's clean. Look at everything coming out of it. Good grief. But let me show you the difference in the tip now that we're getting some of that gunk out of there. I roll it as I'm drying it, and that begins to restore the tip. Look at the tip on that thing. I could draw a very fine line of that. And then I lay it down on its side. I don't ever I have containers that are great to organize my brushes, but if they're wet, I never stand them up like this. The water will be running down into here. It gets down into the wood, and eventually this starts to become loose because of the moisture, and it's just much better to lay it on its side, allow it to dry. Once they're dry, if you want to store them in your container where they stand up like that, that's perfectly fine. This one's going to have to be scrubbed a little bit more, but I'm going to do it after I get off here so you don't have to keep seeing me do that. Now this is my, this is a Princeton, and this is a liner. and it has lost its tip. And I sign with this, and I do hair with this when I do something like hair or fine grass in a scene. Now this is an incredibly fine brush, meaning it doesn't have very many hairs at all. And so I'm going to have to be super gentle with this because I do not want to lose any of the few hairs that it has. Still get some dirt out of that. Not a lot, but hopefully enough that I can restore my tip. Whenever there's dirt down here, it just pushes the hairs apart, and so you can't quite get your tip back to its original shape because it's being pushed apart by the little bits of dried paint down right by the where the hair attaches to the brush. Look at that tip. Wow. Now that'll work. Now, for the synthetic nylon brushes, those are pretty tough. This one, I don't know what this is more of a bristle brush. It's harder. So maybe I'll use this one right here to demonstrate. This is a brush cleaner, and you can get it at any art store. I don't think Walmart carries it, but pretty much any art store will have this. And it's a few bucks. It's under $5, I'm sure. But it does have abrasives in it to help clean the brush, and so that's why I try not to use it on my sable or natural brushes unless I'm really desperate. If it's got just so much gunk in it that I cannot get a point, I might very gently bring my sable brush in here and wipe it on the side just a little bit. But because it has abrasives, you do not want to scrub a sable very much because you will lose. What happens is the hairs will begin to tear, and so you'll lose like the bottom half end of the hairs. They'll just be tearing off because of the abrasive. You have to be gentle with those sable brushes. I prefer them because of the water. For water media, you cannot beat a sable brush. It holds a lot of water. The points are always fine. It releases water very easily, whereas synthetic nylons, sometimes they're not, they don't hold as much water, and they don't release the water and paint quite as easily. So that's why I prefer the sables, particularly with watercolors. This one wasn't very dirty. It looks like I used a lot of white in it, so but it had lost its edge. It didn't have an edge anymore. This is a synthetic, so I can push down a little bit when I'm scrubbing to try to get in to the bottom. There's that blue coming out. See, now I'm starting to get some of the gunk. But it took a little bit of work, and you can do it with these. Now when I'm using them, I still don't press down on the jar to wash it and rinse the water out, but I do when I'm trying to clean them. I'm gently pushing. I'm not pushing super hard, but I'm just trying to move that grunge that's down in there and get it out. And if you need to, on a synthetic brush, you can go on the bottom. But here's what you may not be able to see that on the bottom. I'm going like this. I'm not shoving down like this because that would really damage the hairs. I'll demonstrate with this one. If I was shoving down like that, I'm going to damage the hairs on that brush. But if I'm going back and forth on the bottom of the jar, it does allow me to apply ever the slightest amount of pressure without damaging it, but I just don't do that with my sables. I come over to the clean water, again, back and forth gently, or against the side. And now let's see. Oh yeah, there's that fine tip restored. That'll make a straight, very thin pencil, thin line. So that is how I clean my brushes and what I use. Again, that's just called the Master's Brush Cleaner. I don't know that there's another brand out there. There probably is. This is just BJ's, the Master's Brush Cleaner. And it has a little bit of conditioner in it. Some people do like to add conditioner to their brushes. I don't. I just don't want extra stuff in there that if I forget that it's in there, and I forget to rinse it, that's going to wind up on my watercolor paper, and I don't know what it's going to do to it, so I don't like to risk that. But some people actually put mousse on their brushes and let them dry really hard to a fine hard point, kind of to train them, but more so because maybe they have them in a big box and they do a lot of plein air or traveling with their paintbrushes and they're getting all beat up. Um, and so the hard end protects them from losing their shape. I prefer to use a container like this for my brushes so that they're down inside and they're protected. So even if I'm traveling and they're getting banged around, they're going to be just fine. When I open it up, they're going to be just the right shape they need to be, and it ties together. So that's what I use, and you can get those at any art store as well. So I hope that helps you with preserving the life of your brushes so that they last a little bit longer for you in today's world where they cost so much. It's always good to spend a few minutes and just give your brushes a good cleaning from time to time. It doesn't have to be done often. Every few months, 2-3 times a year is fine. Unless you just happen to notice that you've got some odd colors coming out on your brush that you didn't put in there, then you know it's time to clean it. So I have a good time painting, and please like and subscribe and check back for the next lesson. I'm going to do a little bit of texturing next time, and hopefully you can join us next weekend for that. Bye-bye.